right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Friday. It's the free-for-all, and we got a 2-minute late start. I do apologize for that. Just a couple last-second tweaks. But as you know, I've been really efforting starting at exactly noon, and I think that effort will be meet with even greater success as we move forward. It is Friday, so that means the free-for-all. That means I especially want to hear from you, even more so than on other days. No guests on Friday. Rarely, every now and then I'll have a guest, but that's basically based on their schedules. There's someone I really want to speak to, and they want to speak to me, and Friday is their best day, then we do it on Friday because, I'm all about trying to have top quality speakers, people who are experts, who know a lot, and maybe disagree with me as well. We had some really good guests this week. I'm going to revisit the two that I just had on. Nancy Wallace from the Green Party, Montgomery County, Maryland. She was on Wednesday, and I think that was a really good program. I think you should watch it, especially if you live in Maryland's 8th district, which is where she is running for Congress, challenging Jamie Raskin, Nancy on the Green Party ticket. And I'm just going to play one clip that really struck me. I was by and large very, very impressed with what Nancy had to say. Obviously, she is a cut above just about every other politician. Raskin is bright. I mean, she conceded that point. I hate to concede it because I think he's done so many things that are counterproductive, that have been harmful. He's been a divisive figure rather than a unifying one. So I'm not a fan, obviously, but okay, he's smart. Yeah, Harvard Law Review, smart. Doesn't mean you're that smart. Doesn't mean you're a genius, but yeah, he's not stupid. I'll give you that. We start our program, then I'll also go over one aspect of Bill Neal. He was our guest yesterday. His column that I didn't touch on because it's quite long and I didn't get to all of it, but there was another quote there I wanted to get to discuss with him, and we didn't get a chance. Very, very important, I think very powerful, where he channels the famous ultra left-wing socialist professor, very influential from Cal Berkeley in the 50s and 60s, Herbert Marcuse. So we'll revisit Bill's column as well and get to a lot of your social media comments and tariffs as well. I will, as I try to center the victims of Israel. I've been doing that since last October 7, which is coming up on its first anniversary. I don't have any death count, any new numbers from Gaza. The focus has shifted among media, even Middle Eastern media, even Palestinian media, to northern Israel and Lebanon, where Israel has engaged in a brutal bombardment of southern Lebanon after its almost certainly illegal use of explosive devices in pagers that resulted, I believe do we have hundreds of deaths including children, right? Maybe not hundreds of explosions, maybe 40 deaths. I'm not sure the exact number. I do apologize for that. I should have it. Latest news, though, this airstrike. And the reason they struck, Israel did, is because Hezbollah vowed revenge against the killings, the indiscriminate killing by Israel in Lebanon. So Hezbollah says we're gonna have to take reprisals against Israel. So Israel's response to the totally understandable and justifiable call for some consequences for Israel's illegal action is Israel engages in another illegal action, bombing Lebanon. So there you go, Beirut. 8 more killed, 60 wounded others. It is just horrific what we're doing there. And, you could say, well, we hear that the Harris-Biden team is really working round the clock for a ceasefire. So the bloodletting, we can rely on them. They're going to make a difference. They're going to change the trajectory. The bloodletting will cease there. No. The situation remains as dire or perhaps more dire than it's been in decades, if not since the creation of the State of Israel. And now even the Blinken State Department, and of course Blinken has been this ceaseless voice of optimism and a constant apologist for everything Israel does, but now the State Department acknowledges that nope, no ceasefire, don't expect it. And that's through at least January, right? Out of reach for Biden. So Biden will be out of office regardless of the results of the November election in January. So brace yourselves for 4 more months of bloodshed, of carnage initiated by Israel, with zero hope of change, because you've heard from Kamala, speaking for the Harris-Biden administration, there's not going to be any change. Israel gets to keep killing. Or as she would put it, gets to keep acting in self-defense. Of course, they're not acting in self-defense. That's just a lie. So there it is. You want to vote for her? Vote for her. I can't, You want to say she's going to be less bad than Trump? I'm not sure what your evidence is. I keep looking for that evidence that she's somehow less bad than Trump. It's true, she didn't try to stay in power illegally after she was voted out of office. So that's a big deal. I give you that. It's a really, really, really big deal. But as big a deal as that is, she's complicit in genocide. And that's maybe an even bigger deal. And even if it isn't a bigger deal, I'm not voting for either one. I don't have a new death count, so I just went with from yesterday. I'm not going to leave this off screen just because we don't know just how many more people Israel killed yesterday in Gaza. We do know the number is over 41,270, and that's with the full explicit support, the backing of the Harris-Biden administration. All right, before I go get into like a reprisal of the week and talk about tariffs and all that, I just want to let folks know what I'll be doing over the weekend, and I will discuss this on, well, maybe not Monday because it's going to be an Arlen Monday, but I try to walk the walk. I talk a lot in this program about the issues that are most important to me, peace, some kind of economic justice, meaning security for all Americans, an end to the ecocide. And, I don't know, those are all crucially important. There are many other issues that are of great importance. But, I put those 3 certainly at the top: economic security, an end to genocide, an end to ecocide. And they all go together, right? I mean, if we all had enough and none of us had too much, we'd be much better stewards as a nation of the environment. We also wouldn't allow ourselves to be divided over whether or not it's okay for one country to completely eliminate an entire ethnic group with our support. I think we also probably wouldn't be ranging so we wouldn't be so divided about the wisdom of our proxy war against Russia. So I'll be at this conference, virtually that is, worldbeyondwar.org. And I, trying to get involved with people who see things the way I do. According to at least one poster, nobody does. And he's got a point. They've got a point. There aren't a lot of people I've found who have the same views as I do, but at least on, certainly virtually no one on every issue, but even on most issues, on individual issues, I tend to take a pretty unique perspective. So I'm looking forward to this event, and it's going to be over the weekend. So I said virtually Sunday, World Beyond War will be in D.C., Washington, D.C., a few miles from my house. So I'm going to try to make it down there. I may or may not. It's a bit of a drive, but I might go down there. I haven't been watching much football at all. I've kind of dropped that as a guilty pleasure because it's not pleasurable for me anymore to see people just getting hurt, injured. So I've kind of stopped with football. So looking forward to this World Beyond War, at least if not looking forward to it, something for me to do, get involved, make a difference, I hope. And I'll be able to talk about it. I'll discuss what I learn what makes sense in my view to share with you on next week. All right, let's get to just one quick segment, and I will get to a lot. There's a lot of responses, but I do want to hear from you at all points. 240-242-5646, and I do have my phone app up, so I can take your calls at any point. 240-242-5646. May not be looking closely at the chat. So if you want to engage with me directly today, the best way to do that will be to call. Again, 240-242-5646. I repeat it quickly. I know people have trouble remembering it, but guess what? You get to see it on the screen. So do you really need to hear me say it over and over again when you can see that number right there on your screen? Or just put it in your phone. Put it in your phone as a favorite number or contact, and you should be able to just click or type Halitics or call Halitics. Say call Halitics or Siri call Halitics. All right, here's Nancy. She was on Wednesday, and you see the way I called that program. Nancy Walls for Congress, Maryland 8. So that's my vote. I'm going to vote for Nancy. But here's a section where I really want to highlight, because this is what I think is a critically important moment where I don't share Nancy's view. Let me play this for you. Would you have voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be the House Speaker if that name came up?
I think I would, but I would clearly require some sort of political gain from that vote. I would put forward, for instance, a subcommittee chair position, or the guaranteed consideration of some major climate budget changes in the budget process. I would want to. So
even though he takes money from and let me stop it there. So I did talk over her there. I kind of feel bad about that. I know I do that on occasion. That's something I should work on. I do try to work on that. But I was really upset, to be frank with you, with that response. If I vote for a Green Party candidate, I strongly expect them not to vote for House Speaker, a corporate-owned member of any party, right? I mean, of course, whether that's the end of it, right? I mean, I vote for a Green Party candidate because they don't take any corporate money. They don't take any PAC money. They're not affiliated with the corporate/military state. So for Nancy Wallace to say, well, I think I would vote for Jeffries, is very upsetting to me. Also because, I mean, he's corporate owned, and he's a particularly bad they are all bad, right? I mean, I wouldn't want her to vote for AOC at all either. I don't like her. I certainly don't like, I wouldn't want any of them to get her vote. But Jeffries is especially bad because of his extremely close ties to the genocidal state of Israel and to Wall Street, which is, behind our endless wars and the incredibly unjust, unequal world we live in, impoverished world we live in. So that really bothered me. Now I know she hedges. She's like, well, I would want this and I would want that. That's kind of the Green Party. That's kind of the AOC argument too, right? Oh, well, we got concessions. We didn't get a vote on Medicare for all. And Nancy, to her credit, says I would want a vote on the environment. To me, none of that's good enough. In the end, you've got somebody whose first loyalty, that is Hakeem Jeffries, whose first loyalty is to the donor class, the Wall Street class, the billionaire class. That's where Hakeem Jeffries sits. And I just cannot see how one could vote for him. So that is a problem. Let me play a little more of this and then we'll move on. Even though he is extremely well-funded both by AIPAC and by Wall Street, he has taken congressional delegations to Israel, you would still consider voting for him to be House Speaker. Why?
I would have to vote for him, for myself, or abstain. And I think I would prefer to work on policy issues within the context of Democratic chairs of committees. That's all.
All right, so she went on a little more, but that was the basic gist of what Nancy had to say. And, you know, I think that's the Bernie argument too. I need to work with Democrats. You can't work with them. You can't work with, there's not a give and take. You have to defeat them or they defeat you. And we've seen that certainly with the squad. So I just don't. That to me was a problematic response. I'll still vote for her. I still think she would be on balance. I know she'd be better than Raskin. I think on balance, she'll do good. I think Raskin on balance has done a lot of harm. That's, you know, one of my litmus. I always say there's no litmus test. Well, you can't support genocide and I won't vote for you. But if you do, I won't vote for you. But you got to be someone who I think will make life better. It will certainly try. We'll try to make life better for poor Australian working people. And I think, you know, Nancy will. So yeah, I'll vote for her. This is from Bill. I'm going to jump to Bill Neal real quick, but there's a quote that I've got here that is related to closely, I believe, that back and forth I had with Nancy. So I want to just, you know, again, please check out, do a solid for my good friend Bill Neal, William Neal. The more eyeballs, right, that click on his Substack, the better. Even if you can afford it, you know, send him a few bucks. He would really appreciate that. He's a great guy. So there it is. His article, that's what we talked about from the 13th. And he's pro-Ukraine, endless proxy war. I'm not. And that's a huge difference. But all that said, I have great respect for Bill, really like Bill. Wish he had a different view. This is from his piece. And again, you know, it's titled Ukraine, but Ukraine's audacity, but there's an awful lot more in there than just Ukraine. So let me get into that. And by the way, remember, click subscribe, click like. Want those. Keep growing, keep like a shark. If we don't move forward, we die. So we got to keep growing, even if nobody shares my views. And we'll get into that. I think there are a few of you who the thing is, if you disagree with me on one thing, you get, you know, people are like, I'm shutting my ears. I can't hear it, right? I can't hear. It's like when I say I can't vote for Kamala because she is pro-genocide. I'll still listen to her, though. I just can't see voting for somebody who, in this moment, when that is the issue, the profound moral issue of our day, is on the wrong side of it. That, you know, at that point, I can't vote for that. This is from Bill's piece. And he's quoting somebody else. I don't know who's quoting Herbert I guess it is Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse knew that they're gradually being realized through means and institutions which cancel their liberating potential. So he's talking about progressive organizations, and I think even including like he doesn't mention civil rights groups, because I think he recognized that civil rights groups in the 60s, 50s, 60s actually did make a profound difference, a profound change in society. But in the end, we've seen them become co-opted in many ways and become part of the establishment. And leaders, even, you know, going back to the 60s and the civil rights movement, like, you know, now the deceased Jordan from Georgia, who was a great leader of SNCC, and then he became one of the top recipients of monies from the pharmaceutical companies. We've seen Jim Clyburn be a profoundly regressive force in Congress when it comes to any kind of action to address poverty, to address the climate catastrophe, to rein in corporations. So we have seen that groups that may have, were ostensibly and for many years truly progressive have been co-opted, and that's what Marcuse talks about. So he says there are dozens, hundreds, thousands of opposition organizations and movements trying to save animals, clean up the environment, help workers, protect children, but no significant opposition to the system as a whole and its way of life. And so that's what I see is the problem, again, even with the Democratic Party, but with groups I've been associated with, like Our Revolution. They accept the duopoly. They are not prepared to back true outsiders like a Jill Stein, like the Green Party. They're not prepared to radically transform society. And I could make an argument we don't need to, right? I could say, well, we just need much higher taxes on the wealthy. We just need to bring jobs back to this country with tariffs. We need to end Wall Street domination of our military policy. But all of that can be done through some type of evolutionary means. It can be done peacefully. It can be done without some kind of revolution. And I hope that's true. But at this point, because the inequality is so profound, that kind of evolution would be a true revolution. We're at a point in this country that I think is akin to, perhaps worse in many ways, than where we were in the depths of the Great Depression before Roosevelt took power. And his administration was in many ways a tremendous break, a revolutionary break, where tax rates went up to over 90% from, I think, 15%. He forcibly took wealth and power and influence from the billionaire class. And that democratic ascendancy did make some real changes, some meaningful, important, critical changes in our society. We have backslid drastically, and we need another revolution, I believe, to get where we need to go. Even if possibly, hopefully, that revolution could be accomplished evolutionarily. But, then it becomes semantics. So I'm just looking up that Georgia civil rights leader. This is awful. I'm so bad. Who became a Congress member, John Lewis. So I'm terribly sorry that I got the name wrong, but that's, of course, who I meant, John Lewis. But John Lewis was a disappointment in many ways in Congress, not as a leader in the civil rights movement. By the way, just before we, and I want to get to Nancy as well. No significant opposition to the system as a whole in its way of life. Dr. King provided a profound opposition to the system as a whole. Ending segregation, ending Jim Crow was a remarkable opposition. It was a remarkable revolution in society. But he, even after the civil rights laws were passed by Johnson, even before, he spoke out against Vietnam. He spoke out against poverty. Regardless of who was impoverished. Dr. King, did provide a coherent moral imperative for changing the system as a whole. And, you can say, well, it's a democracy, right? So if people vote for change, that would change the system. So we don't really need this newfangled whatever movements. But the problem is that the system doesn't. The United States government and our institutions are not responsive to the people. They're not democratic. The system co-opts those who are trying to and who gain some power, some influence. The system co-opts them so they no longer fight for the kind of change that poor, struggling, working people truly want. So the system does need to be changed. We need significant opposition to it as a whole. And that means you can't vote for Kamala Harris. That means, in my view, you can't vote for Hakeem Jeffries to be your House Speaker. And that's why I have a problem with what Nancy Walls said, notwithstanding her really good positions on a lot of issues. That's why the squad proved to be such an extraordinary disappointment when they could have forced the vote in 2020, and they chose not to. They chose to move along. Okay, so one of the memes, one of the big arguments for Biden that I've seen on social media, and I'm sure you've seen it too, and maybe you've even posted it, is that, hey, the stock market's soaring. We're all doing so much better. The S&P 500 and the Dow Jones just hit highest levels ever in history, lifting 401ks and retirement accounts. So yes, we are better off than we were 4 years ago. See, I think that is such a terrible metric to use. I think that is such a misguided and, wrong-headed approach to define our well-being by whether our stock portfolio has risen. And there's so many reasons why. Lots of people have tiny little retirement accounts. So maybe they've doubled from 2,000 to 4,000 over the past 5 years, 6 years. Is that enough? Of course it isn't. Social Security is always a struggle just to get it to rise to meet inflation needs. I talk to people who tell me I don't have enough. I'm maxing out my credit card debt now. These are retirees. They're not better off. These are people who retired their whole lives. They're not better off. They're worse off. The stock market is such a poor proxy for the country as a whole. And if you use it as a proxy, then what you're saying is, as long as the rich get richer, we're all better off. So it's a crazy, it's so misguided. Now understand, this is like an all hands on deck approach. We've got to defeat Trump. He's the monster. He's the 8 tentacled squid we have to crush, or 10 tentacles. A squid have 10 that we have to crush, the Leviathan. So even if maybe that's not my first argument or my best, or it works really well, it's easy to understand, and you can put it in a soundbite. So let's talk about the stock market. When you do that, you hurt your own credibility, and you put yourself in a position where if the stock market crashes, or if in another election you have a Democrat who presides over a stock market downturn, now you don't have a good argument for that person. If you made the argument to begin with, it's all based on the stock market. But even this is a bad argument in a lot of ways, putting aside how one-sided a rising stock market is when it comes to the nation as a whole. It certainly doesn't address the environment, the environmental collapse, endless war. I don't feel better off for a lot of reasons, even though, yes, it is true, my net worth in dollars has risen. I personally feel secure economically, but I don't feel better off because I know so many people aren't and have not and are not and will not benefit from, this. So that argument really grinds my gears. But let me, and I pointed out why on social media, and I got a really aggressive pushback. So my response, I'll show it to you in just a sec. Let me just get this screen a little better. And by the way, while I'm taking this pause that refreshes, don't forget subscribe. So there's what I posted. I'm sure the record numbers of homeless people are ecstatic. And you can see the responses. I don't know how many of those are like thumbs up, and then there's like a laugh. And I don't think that laugh is like, I'm laughing with you, Ginsburg. Like, that's a funny line, which I think it is somewhat funny, right? I mean, it's funny if, Democrats are supposed to be the party of the working person, and yet there are so many of us who are, and when I say us, I mean Americans. There are so many Americans who are barely surviving, if that. So if you're going to say, oh, the stock market's doing great, we're all better off. Well, I'm sure they're ecstatic, as I say sardonically, but I don't think they're laughing at me. That kind of comment really, really irritates a lot of people. They don't want to see it. What people want is, you're on the blue team, you will only say pro-blue things. And what you wrote isn't pro-blue. Well, I'm on the American team. I'm on the human team. And I write things I think are pro-person. And when you say that the stock market is up to record levels, so we're all better off, then you're saying something that's anti-people. And you're saying something that's frankly anti-American, and I'm not going to, parrot it. I just won't. In fact, I want people to stop doing it very, very much. Yeah, there it is. Click subscribe. Do me a favor. Click subscribe. 240-242-5646. Call in. I'll take your call. So I got a lot of pushback. By the way, I want to say this is from the Activist Democrat site. I think you can probably join it if you look for it on Facebook. And I actually got suspended. They didn't, I think they just said my commenting privileges were suspended for a couple of days. A lot of people complain about some of my posts. Never personal, never attacked them personally, never criticized. But some of what I had posted, I guess, rankled. And it's often been interpreted as pro-Trump, which it most certainly isn't. I really appreciate activist Democrats. There's a back and forth, just like there is on Halitics. There's, a debate, and the moderators there will allow that debate, unlike places like Kos and other Facebook groups, where if you don't subscribe to or at least promote the dominant the paradigm of that site, you're out. At least if you challenge it, you can just sit there and be a lurker, but what fun is that? So I got a response, which I thought was a little surprising, to be perfectly honest, to my post about, I'm sure the record numbers of homeless people will be ecstatic. I got a bit of a surprise. But when I posted that, I didn't have a particular site or link in mind. I was 95% confident that it was true. In other words, that the Biden administration has overseen record levels of homelessness. But I didn't have a site in mind. So I saw this response, right? Please provide a link to the record number of homeless people because I can't find one. So I was a little surprised because I'm like, well, you can Google just like I can. And I was pretty sure that it was true. But I was also thinking, well, maybe it's not, right? Like, or maybe I got it wrong and I have to do a mea culpa. I was wrong. I overstated it. It's not true. There are more homeless people under Trump or more homeless people under Obama or what have you. But I figured I wasn't wrong, because if I was wrong, if it was a false statement, it was an error, and there were more homeless people under a different president, or homelessness had dropped under Biden or something of that nature, then I would assume they would post it, right? I mean, why would you ask for a site if you could prove right then and there? Like, what if there was a screaming headline from this, summer that said, homelessness drops, levels of unhoused people at lowest level since, 2018 or something of that sort, right? You would post that because it would make your argument and make me look like a jerk, which is what your goal would be because you promote Democrats and Biden. But I was like, well, I better do my own Googling. And so let me see if I can see. There we go. So please provide a link to the record number because I can't find one. So I did. I Googled top, record levels of homelessness, and there's the link I provided. It's from the U.S. News and World Report. Let me get the whole screen, and then I'm going to show it to you because I went to it. And I wanted, of course, I'm sure the record levels of homeless people. So it had to be pretty current, right? It couldn't have been from 3 years ago because I'm going after the argument that having a stock market boom is like a tide that lifts all boats. So this is from April 2024. So less than 6 months ago, it's within this half of the year, fiscal year, since the stock market were filed. And I don't know how often they do these surveys to count the number of homeless. But I didn't see any headline post April 20 that said homelessness down. More people are finding homes. More people are housed. So I didn't see anything like that. What I did see is this article, record numbers in the U.S. are homeless. Can cities find them for sleeping in parks and on sidewalks? And I think the answer is yes, tragically. The Supreme Court has said, yeah, you can. So there it is. While Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have overseen a stock market rise, they've also overseen a rise in homelessness. And I think that's an absolute tragedy. And it's not something they ever talk about. So then in response, I got this post as well, this comment. Actually, poverty is down under Biden. Facts matter, not lies and false fear-mongering. So I never said anything about poverty. I didn't say poverty was up. I didn't say poverty was down. I said homelessness. I said, I'm sure the record numbers of homeless will be ecstatic that the stock market is so high. That was my point. And I was right. There are record levels of homelessness. And I'm sure they're not ecstatic. And then I got this comment, well, poverty is down. So you're an idiot. Facts matter, not lies. And false fear-mongering. Well, I never said poverty was up. Your response is totally an opposite. But it just shows you again, we can't have a conversation. People aren't up for a discussion, a dialogue. See, 4 people like it. And obviously it's a ridiculous response. Can't have a conversation. And I was thinking too, how people mock Trump for his statement, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I'd still get people's votes. And it was a stupid thing to say, as Trump often says really stupid things. But let's face it, Harris can say, I'm going to support genocide, and people will still vote for her. So I don't see really any difference, right? I'm going to keep giving bombs to Israel so they can kill Gazans in record numbers, and she still gets votes. How is that different from I could pay someone to kill somebody on Fifth Avenue and still got a vote? I don't see the difference. But this argument, so I thought, well, okay, maybe poverty is down. I thought, well, a lot of people are working 2-3 jobs. They're probably not technically impoverished. So maybe this person's right. I didn't really take an issue with it, but I decided to look it up. Actually, I didn't even have to look it up because the poster very usefully included a link to this chart, as a matter of fact. So I looked at the chart because I really was curious. Well, let's see. Are poverty rates down? That would be a good thing. I would certainly welcome that, although there's been no real change in the system and poverty rates go up and down like everything else. And, I'm not going to give a president too much credit or too much blame unless their policies can be directly tied to it, right? I mean, I don't give... I do blame Biden for the increases in homelessness because the president can do an awful lot to reduce homelessness. And Harris, Biden haven't. But if they had, I would give them credit if homelessness was down, of course. If it was down and they hadn't done anything, I wouldn't give them a lot of credit. So is poverty really down from the Trump years, according to that, as that poster insists? And says facts matter and don't fearmonger. So here's the chart from, I guess, 91 or 92 or something of poverty rates. And maybe I'll give you the whole thing. So I highlighted the Trump years in yellow, right? Because I thought everyone would understand. It's very, very clear that the years after the Trump years, to the right of the Trump years, are the 3 completed years of the Harris-Biden administration. And you can see through 2019, poverty rates plummeted under Trump. I mean, I can give you a lot of reasons. I don't think Trump was a great steward of the economy by any means. I do think the tariffs were a good idea. I've been critical of the way they were implemented. If you want more on that, go to the Halitics Facebook page. I talk about that in response to a comment from Art. But there's poverty rates reached their lowest level, at least in 20 plus years, in 2019. And then they went back up, but they still weren't even as high as in 2018. And still, when Trump left office, poverty was lower than it had been at any time under Obama. So, and, again, I'm not going to totally blame Obama for that. I mean, that was the mortgage crisis, the bank crisis. Obama didn't do the right things. He didn't do the right things to end it. He should have bailed out homeowners and should have provided direct assistance to renters and others who were the victims of that crisis. But, okay, he didn't create it. That was more, that's on Bill Clinton and the Clintons and the Bushes, who deserve the blame for the mortgage crisis. But regardless, you can't make a serious argument that Biden has brought down poverty, right? I mean, it's still higher now, or at least it was at the end of 23, than it was at the lowest level when Trump was in office. And it went up under Biden's year, the first year, which was 20. So that's the COVID year. We got it. But again, if you look just at the stats, now I don't think any of this is a great argument for voting for either Harris or Trump. But the numbers is what they is, and what all these Harris sycophants are saying online is false. Is false. So this is the final comment on the stock market. I thought this was really, really good, and I hadn't really thought of this, but this was. And by the way, again, good on you, as Tom Hartman annoyingly would say, good on you, activist Democrats. You do allow for real debate, and you do allow for differences for positions that are counter to your paradigm, which is vote blue no matter who. So what this person posted was stock markets are judged by percentage rise over time. Absolutely true. Absolutely correct. Just because the markets have gone up, 10,000 under a president today, and they didn't go up ever under, over 10,000 points under Ike. In fact, I don't think they were over 5,000. I think they were maybe at 2,000-3,000 under Ike, if even that high. But the market did incredibly well under Eisenhower because you measure it by percentage rise. You don't measure it by absolute rise. So what this poster notes is that under Trump, the market actually went up more rapidly. It went up a higher percentage under Trump than it did under Harris Biden. So again, your argument, oh, look at how great the stock market is doing, we are better off, we should elect Joe Biden, fails. Because it actually, at least according to that poster, I didn't count the numbers, did better under Trump as a percentage. Now, again, I don't think the stock market should be a proxy for the economy at large. I don't think we should rely on the stock market as an argument for voting for anybody in particular, unless we can tie a direct crash, as we could in 2008, was it, under W, to his failure to rein in out of control bankers, right? They let that happen. Of course, that was also the regulation that the Clintons had pushed. So, there are times when you can blame a president or give credit to a president. I don't think Trump deserves a lot of credit for the positive performance of the stock market when he was president, or for the drop in poverty rates. But the numbers say that though he did well, that those were good years in many ways. I could point to a lot of reasons I don't think they were, but what is it? State statistics never lie. Liars can't figure. I don't know, but all that. I'm going to call out BS if I see it, and I expect people to say, okay, your point is well taken. Yeah. So I'm wrong. People don't. I expect that. It doesn't happen. And so there was this comment in response to my show yesterday, my podcast, and my dispute with Bill. Hal, does anybody agree with you on anything? Perhaps that should tell you something. So, first of all, I accept the premise, although it's presented somewhat snarkily. Very few people do agree with me on very much. It's true. And I have often wondered what that means. And one thing it means is that it's kind of a recipe for depression. It kind of sucks. People don't see things the way you see them. And I think, and I'll tell you something else it tells me. This is how I see it. Is like, I'm really bad at chess. Like, I play online chess, and my ranking is low. My ELO is low. My ELO rating is low. And so that tells me I'm not very smart, or at least I'm not very good at chess. Sometimes it bounces around a little, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower. But I'm just not a good chess player. I wish I was, but that's what it tells me. And I could even say, yeah, and sometimes they say I'm stupid because I will just leave a queen, open, or worse, just miss an obvious checkmate that I could have or that my opponent has. So that's what it tells me. So the fact that so many people disagree with me could tell me, one thing it could tell me is that I'm wrong. I don't think it does. Sometimes I ask myself that, and I look at all the data and the evidence. I look at my arguments, and they seem sound to me. Not like when I play chess. If I make a blunder, if I lose a piece, I don't say, oh, that was a good move. It's just I lost my piece. But when I consider the fact that people don't agree with me, I don't think it means I have bad arguments, but I think it means, I don't think it means I'm wrong. I think it means, or I wonder that I'm not a very persuasive advocate. I want to believe I'm a persuasive advocate, but I think what I say, my points, are usually very, very obvious. They don't require you to be a rocket scientist, right? I mean, like, for example, when I say we should raise the price of carbon fuels, fossil fuels, and that would reduce consumption, that's the best way to do it. That just seems really obvious, right? I don't see how there's really much even debate about it. I get the point that, well, that'll hurt poor people, and, I respond to that. But it seems clearly the right answer. So the fact that I can't persuade people that makes me think I must not be a very good arguer. Or the fact that we keep electing Democrats and we keep electing the Unitary Party and things keep getting worse. Doesn't that tell us we should do something differently? It seems very obvious we should go in a different direction. But I can't seem to persuade people of that. So I guess I'm a bad arguer. That's sort of what it tells me. I don't know what else it could tell me. I really don't. I think it tells me that people are tragically, sadly, often, fall victim to the very effective propaganda machine that is employed by the elites to keep you divided, to keep you thinking that the other side is evil and wrong, to distract us. Yeah, I think there's that. But in the end, I can only conclude that my arguments aren't good ones, that I don't persuade, they're not leveled, they're not rendered as effectively as I would like. All right, so that's one comment. Maybe I am wrong. I often think to myself, I could be wrong. Explain to me how I'm wrong. And I never feel like people really do. So, I do sometimes, and I'll change my opinion. When I promoted the fossil fuels tax, some folks would say, well, you're not taking into account how harmful it will be for working people, who will pay a much higher percentage of their income to buy gasoline than rich people do. And I always figured that. It's not like I didn't take it into account. I always said, well, that's why we rebate the money. But I don't think I fully appreciated that argument. And I've kind of tweaked my view on that, which is, well, let's even rebate the money. Let's front people money. Let's give them a check a week before the tax is implemented. So I will definitely respond, but I think the takeaway I have, if people don't agree with me, is I must not make my case very well. All right, here's another comment, same commenter. I read this and I really looked into this. The person who's commenting here has been incredibly helpful to me, done a lot of work, spent their time to help me with the production quality of my videos, which I think has gotten a lot better. I'm not saying it's perfect whatsoever. I'm always trying to make it better. I'm one of those people who keep breaking things until they keep fixing things until they break them. That's me. So I recognize that's a problem. But you need to enable YouTube's stable volume feature. It was totally unfair that your voice was overpowering Bill's. That's from yesterday's program. So I looked into this, and I really didn't know what the stable volume feature was, but I looked and I looked and I looked. So let me show you that first, and then I'll get into the rest of this conversation. So some videos have stable volume and some don't. Some YouTube podcasts have stable volume available to them and some don't. So here's me with Bill. Here's a screen capture of my conversation with Bill from yesterday's program. And you can see the stable volume is grayed out. It's the top. I circled stable volume and annotations. So you can get annotations from my program, but you can't get stable volume. And you can for some shows. So here's one where you can. These are those Due Dissidents, one of my favorite podcasts. You can for them. So what's the difference? Well, the poster was implying strongly or saying that I can control that I can actually enable stable volume for my videos. I can't. I looked into that. I've looked into that one time before. And I had forgotten about this completely, but I went back and I realized I had looked into this once before. I don't have the option in my settings when I post videos, when I stream videos, to enable stable volume. I had two thoughts. Why can't I? The first thought I had was, well, I mostly post live streams, so maybe it's only post-production. In other words, where I would upload a video that was complete, not streaming it, but actually recording it and then uploading it. Maybe those you can have stable volume, but I checked, no, because I've uploaded plenty of often if I have an audio problem or something, I'll repair it and I'll edit and then I'll upload. So I can't. I don't have that power. I don't have that feature on my podcast. So my second thought is that I don't have enough subscribers. My channel isn't big enough, or my videos don't get enough views. And I think that's the right answer. I think if I got to like 500 subscribers or 1,000 subscribers, or if my videos were routinely getting 1,000 views, and they don't. I mean, if I got over 100, I'm kind of happy, and I've had a few that have gotten up into the upper hundreds this past week, so I was very pleased. But I think it may just be that YouTube only enables that feature for very well-subscribed hosts. I don't know that. That's my guess. I couldn't find anything online and I checked. But the bottom line is I cannot enable stable volume for my podcast. That may change. I hope it does. I can't do it. Stable volume does do what the poster said, which is equalize the volume level so that there's not a lot of difference. But I was a little surprised to hear that complaint, because I've worked and worked and worked steadily to try to keep volume levels reasonably equal across the board. And it's not easy. The production software I use is freeware, and it's really, really, really powerful. And it's really, I won't say it's easy to learn exactly, but it was easy enough for me to learn it anyway. So it's pretty tremendous that, I can do this, that you could do this. But one thing it doesn't have is a feature where you can have your entire recording or your entire live stream equalized in terms of modulation. So there's not too much, nothing's too loud or too soft. You can compress and you can gain. Gaining meaning your voice is a little louder. Compressing meaning it's a little bit softer. but I have to do each source, whether it's me, it's a caller, it's a guest, it's a video. I have to have each one have its own separate filters. And I do, and I've done a lot of testing. You can see, this is yesterday's podcast. That is a remarkably even visual representation. In other words, there's no super soft spots. There's no super loud. You see it sharp. There's no flats at the top. If there are flats at the top, that's a problem. There aren't flats. There are a couple places where it's really a little louder. And that's when Bill and I were speaking at the same time. And I'll have more on that. And there are a couple that I highlighted where it's a little lower. Those lower, and they're not a lot lower, are where there was a video playing. So the video audio was a little louder, a little softer, but not noticeably so. That's pretty de minimis difference. So there wasn't that problem. There wasn't that modulation. At least I didn't hear it, right? Now, people's voices may look different, may look similar in terms of audio levels, in terms of volume, but be different. I didn't really hear that. Let me show you a visual representation. I'm going to play this for you. This is that program which only shows audio. This is called Audacity. So here it is, and it's a close-up. And when I'm speaking, the bars are a little closer together. They're less spread out. That's because I speak more quickly. If you take a lot of pauses, they're a little spread out. But the amplitude of each wave is how loud it is. So let me play it. You should be able to see the line move a little bit. First me, then Bill. You'll see I hear virtually no difference and see no difference. I mean, you and I agree on so much. We are 180 degrees apart on this issue. You want us to keep funding that war. Is that right?
Yes, and I want the U.S. To call some of Putin's red lines about the longer range offensive weapons, although it looks like Ukraine used their new rocket drone to hit a huge...
All right, so I'll just stop it there. I mean, you get the point. As far as I can tell, my ears don't hear any noticeable difference in the volume between Bill and me. And visually, you don't see any difference in the volume. So I think we've got that problem resolved. Now, I bring it up, I talk about it now because I think it's somewhat interesting for folks to know how we do this, how I do it. But I also think it's really important. I want the audio to be good. Audio is very, very tough to get right. Maybe you wouldn't think it. I didn't think it when I started doing this. Video is much easier for a lot of reasons. There's more to audio. And also audio is more important because people listen often to the stream, to the podcast, without watching it. But nobody's going to watch. Why would you watch me sitting in a chair behind a microphone with some jigsaw puzzles behind my head? You wouldn't. It's no interest. But you could take a walk, or you can be, making dinner, whatever you do, and listen. So the audio super important. So I wanted to show you what I've done, and then if there's still problems or people have concerns, let me know, because I will do everything I can. I've also posted this on Halitics to have the best quality audio I can. All right, one more comment from our commenter, which I just wanted to share with you because I've been such a staunch, and it's only gotten more so, supporter of Jill Stein. I think she's the best option by far, the only good option by far. So there's this comment: even if Stein could win, she would not have the cooperation of the other branch of government, and that she could accomplish virtually nothing. Well, that's maybe true. But given how bad the branches of government have been, how they've done the wrong thing over and over and over, accomplishing nothing would be a step up from where we are now, which is going in the wrong direction. So right now we're going backward. If she only got us to we're standing still, we'd be relatively better off with her in office than either of the Unitary Party candidates. But I hope that's not true. I would hope that there would be some Democrats who would be willing to work with Stein on issues of peace, on environmental issues, on healthcare issues, on economic justice issues, on social justice issues, which aren't as near and dear to my heart as they are to some people, some progressives. I would hope that Democrats, especially those who are in the progressive caucus, would be willing to work with Jill Stein. If they're not, then I would ask you, if AOC won't even talk to Jill Stein, and she seems like she's really mad at her, if Jamie Raskin isn't willing to go to the White House for a sit-down with Stein and Bernie Sanders, then what's the point of electing them in the first place? I thought we elect these people so that they'll do good things, positive things, progressive, make progressive change. Isn't that why Ro Khanna gets reelected? Because his constituents are hoping at some point he'll be able to make a difference, even if he hasn't been able to yet? So if your argument is, well, no Democrat's going to work with Stein, I would say to you, well, why vote for them? Then vote for more Green candidates. To me, that seemed kind of obvious. But again, nobody agrees with me on anything, so I must be missing something. I think what I'm sort of disingenuously missing is how partisan Washington is and how loyal people are to their political party and the funders of that party and the leaders of that party, and how little concern they really have for the American people and for policies that are best for people. Okay, so I thought this was a good video. You know, it's been over an hour, and I really, really, really wanted to get to tariffs. I think they're so important. I will get to them. I'm going to go a little longer, although I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of ready for the weekend. But let me play this because I thought this was really funny. And it goes to all the carping against, because I feel like that argument, well, even if she wins, she won't be able to accomplish anything. Sort of carping, right? It's like kneecapping. It's not really a substantive criticism of Jill Stein. If anything, I think it's a substantive criticism of the Democrats for being unwilling to work with somebody from another party. And this is a pretty funny video that kind of goes in the same direction, kind of a making light of silly criticisms of Jill Stein.
Condemned.
Vladimir Putin's a war criminal.
Yes, we did.
And Bashar al-Assad's a war criminal.
Yes, in so many words. Yes, we have said as much.
I gotta be.
So what Mehdi Hassan is going after her in that video for not being explicit enough in condemning Putin as a war criminal, because he's talking so quickly. And I don't know if they sped it up for this Instagram. I suppose they did, which is frustrating. But here's the commenter. She's pointing out, or she's responding to the criticism, implicit but very obvious, from Hassan, Mehdi Hassan, against Stein for failing to be harsh enough and obvious enough in condemning Putin. So here's the response from the Instagram poster.
Honest, you guys, like, I'm concerned about Jill Stein not being able to just say in one convenient soundbite that Putin is a war criminal. I mean, yes, she condemns him in like a lot of long sentences that I'm not willing to listen to, but I'm really wondering, with like the world burning before our very eyes, and, you know, our civil rights being continually eroded, and our housing and economic crisis, with all these things going on, if my leader can't condemn a foreign war criminal in a small and easy, convenient 2-second soundbite, then how do I know if she's fit to replace the current war criminals running this country?
All right, so there you go. Very well done. She's saying, hey, if Stein won't condemn Putin, a foreign war criminal, then why should I believe she would be better than the current war criminals that run America? And yeah, I mean, right. I think it's a great point. And you know, I mean, it's just kind of funny because the leadership is so bad in America today, and from both parties, right? The Republican leadership, the Democratic leadership, the nominees are so awful. And the best you can come up with when you go against Jill Stein is, well, you're not explicit enough in condemning Putin. Come on. That's why that proves the point, doesn't it? Right? That's the worst you can say about Jill Stein. Then clearly she should get your vote. All right, I got criticized in the Halitics page for being too hard on Trump. Most people say I'm too easy on Trump. I don't realize how evil he is, what a monster he is. You have to support Harris. Yeah, maybe some of the things you pointed out about Harris. She's not perfect, but you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And besides, look at Trump. So the Trump people, and you know who you are, feel like I'm too hard on Trump. The Harris people feel like I'm far too easy on Trump. But the Trump people feel I'm too hard on Trump. So here is where I think Trump, and why. One of the reasons I actually didn't vote for Hillary, well, there were many reasons. I mean, Hillary I was not going to vote for no matter what. But I made the argument to those who said, well, Trump is so bad, you can't vote for him. Well, I don't know that he's even worse than Hillary. And I'll give you some policies where I agree with him. And one of them was tariffs. And I certainly still agree tariffs are good. Again, I think he has implemented them. He implemented them poorly, should have implemented them on all imported goods, at least from low-wage countries. The policy should have been based on wages. What is the prevailing wage in those countries, at least in those industries? And in any country where the prevailing wage is a lot lower than ours, like in China for assembling computers or in Haiti for manufacturing garments, we should have tariffs. That would be my way of doing it, because the goal should be to protect American jobs and incentivize the creation of more jobs. Here's Trump on in his debate, and I hope I don't have too long to this, because then I want to get to the social media comments and then I'll respond to them.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs.
Well, she was claiming that the tariff is a sales tax, right? That's Harris's argument. Well, you've got a tariff, and a tariff is a sales tax. So that's what she says. Okay, we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a little bit. But that's what Harris's big point against Trump is. Yeah, he's going to raise the price on Americans because they're going to have to pay more for imported goods because he's put a tariff, which is a sales tax. That's what she said.
Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China.
All right, so I'll stop there. Now, Trump kind of rambles, and he's wrong too. The money wasn't taken in from China. Right? It's not a sales tax, nor was it paid by China. Here is a meme that reflects ignorance of the issue as well. And this meme is at that activist Democrat site. And I've seen it elsewhere. So a lot of people post this. Because Trump is for tariffs, there's a knee-jerk reaction against them. But tariffs are not always good. You don't always want to impose them. It depends on a lot of factors. But the most important is whether the labor that manufacture the good is paid a fair wage or not. If they're paid a fair wage, we don't need a tariff. There are other factors that could play into it, but I think that's the most important. And a perfect example of this is the people who always oppose tariffs are those who exploit labor, because they get a huge advantage when competing against manufacturers and producers who don't exploit labor or who exploit labor less. So the Southern slave owning class, the enslavers, the planters, they hated tariffs, because anytime the North said, we want tariffs to protect our manufacturing, we make shirts and we have to pay our workers a pretty decent wage to make those shirts. We grow wheat. We have to pay agricultural labor a decent amount of money for the wheat that we grow. They were opposed by the South because the South was terrified that if we started imposing tariffs on grain and on finished products, countries that we traded with, such as the UK, France, Russia, would start imposing tariffs on cotton and tobacco and rice and other items that were manufactured in the South or were produced in the South by slaves, by enslaved peoples who were paid virtually nothing. So because they were paid virtually nothing, the producers, the planters, the owners could undercut everyone else in price. It costs very, very little to make a pound of rice if you don't pay the people who grow the rice anything at all, except you throw them a little bit of rice themselves to eat, and they live on a bare floor on your property. And if you want more workers, you can rape one of your enslaved women or girls or buy one, and that's the end of it. So those labor exploiters, the worst of all time, hated tariffs. Tariffs are always opposed by people who exploit labor. And when you post this crap, a tariff on imported goods is paid by the American consumer, not by the country of origin, you're lending aid and support to labor exploiters, people who run sweatshops, or like the Fruit of the Loom and Hanes and Levi Strauss in Haiti that joined forces with Hillary Clinton's State Department in 2011 to stop a minimum wage hike in Haiti from 29 cents an hour. And Hillary got it stopped. Those were the worst kind of labor exploiters. They don't like tariffs. So the point that meme is, Trump's totally wrong. It's not China. It's not the country that pays for the tariff. It's the American consumer. Well, the bottom line is they're both wrong. The tariff is, but they're both wrong. But that doesn't. But even though Trump is wrong about who pays the tariff, he's right that tariffs should be used frequently and as a critical tool in the kit to protect American labor, to provide more good jobs for Americans. So this is from the U.S., Trade Department, I guess. International Trade Administration. And I know I've gone over this before, but it's really, really important because it also goes to the issue of people just mindlessly supporting Kamala because she's not Trump and mindlessly opposing Trump because they oppose Trump, even when Trump is right on the big picture, the big issue, which is, should we have tariffs? He's wrong. It isn't China, though. Imported tariffs overview and resources. It's not the country that we import the goods from that pays the tariff either. Imported tariffs overview. So here, this is from that site. Let me get you it, and they tell you exactly who pay it. And this may excite some controversy, so I'll get into an even greater deal. But the tariff is paid by the importer. Okay, the tariff is paid by the individual or corporation that brings the good into the country. So if Apple brings in computers from China that are made in China by, I forget the name of that company. There's a big company there that makes computers. They have their factories there. So Apple brings in those computers to distribute in the United States. They're on a ship. The ship is at San Pedro Harbor and outside LA. There's all these containers. There's a customs agent. I don't think there are tariffs on computers, but if there were, Apple would have to pay the tariff right there on every computer. It's collected at the time of customs clearance in the foreign port. So that's the end of it. That's who pays it. I don't understand the argument. See, and it says foreign port. That's because they're tariffs that are imposed on American goods, right? So if you make a good for this, the reason that is because the way this was set up is if you make the good here and you bring it into, say, France or whatever, Le Havre, and then they collect it at that time when it's clear custom. So it's whoever brings the good into that port. That's the bottom line. It's not the consumer. You buy your good that's made in China on Amazon or at your local store. You don't pay a tariff. Now you pay sales tax. That's a tax, right? At the cash register, you see like an 8% or a 6% or whatever it is. That's a tax. The tariff is collected and collected at the port of entry by the importer. That's not a tax. That's a tariff. They're not the same thing, and it's not paid for by the consumer. Now, the response is always, well, it makes the price go up because the importer has to jack up their price or chooses to jack up their price to make up for what they have to pay in the tariff. Well, it is true that tariffs do cause prices to rise, but they don't rise as much as the tariff because of the reduction in demand that accompanies rising prices. People will buy less of the good because of the higher price. And to make up for that reduction in sales, that will happen if the price is raised. Companies can't raise their price the full amount of the tariff. And this chart shows that exactly. Now, even if they could, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have tariffs. Because the tariff, although it's not a tax, it is a source of revenue for the government. And that means our taxes can be lowered. Working people's taxes can be lowered. So there's a benefit. But the taxes can be lowered by the precise amount of the tariff. If the tariff revenue is $1 billion, as Trump claims, hundreds of billions of dollars, well, then taxes can be reduced by that same amount. And you didn't pay that. Now, you might pay more if you buy goods that are subject to the tariff. You will pay a little more, but you won't pay as much as your taxes would go down. Because as this chart shows, prices on the left is the vertical axis, quantities on the right. This is a standard issue supply and demand curve. They're not really curves, they're just straight lines, but they could be curves. Supply and demand charts. And the red line is the supply without tariff. In other words, how much a producer will, what their cost looks like and how much they will produce at any price. And then how much they will produce at a price. The price is what you pay. So with a $2 tariff, okay, the price will go up about $1.25 because producers have to reduce their profit to maintain sales. And this is a curve with a pretty inelastic demand curve. It's pretty vertical. Inelastic means even if you raise your price, you don't lose that much sales. Very elastic is just a small change in price means a great reduction. If you lower your price, you'll sell a lot more. That's elastic. If you raise the price, you'll sell a lot less. Inelastic is where you raise the price and you sell almost the same amount. So you can see here, when the price drops from 10 to 1, the quantity goes from 1 to 7. So that's a quantity change of 6 and a price drop of 9. So it's inelastic. If it was elastic, you'd see much greater change in sales versus price change. And even with an inelastic demand curve, the sale price, the price the consumer pays after a tariff of $2 is imposed, the consumer only pays about $1.25 more. So you have from about $4.75, the price goes up to about $6. That's not a tax. Your price isn't going up by the amount of the tax. Price is going up by a significantly less smaller amount. And the value goes to the government. I don't, the arguments against it are so weak. The arguments against tariffs are so weak. But guess who would be hurt? Labor exploiters. Because they'd have to pay, they wouldn't be able to, they'd have to pay a price for bringing in goods that are made by cheaper labor. Their profits would be significantly reduced. And ultimately, the jobs would be created in the United States where workers are paid more money. All right, to finish this, I'm just going to play this from Hartman because Hartman's a total Democratic apologist and he's always attacking Trump. You can see the date. It's this year. So even this year, this presidential election year, Tom Hartman is going to call for tariffs.
This is amazing. As you know, those of you who've listened to the program over the last 21 years, I am a big advocate of protectionism, of economic protectionism, of tariffs and non-tariff barriers to trade. I think countries should, I think America, but I think generally this is true of every country in the world, countries should be able to stand on their own 2 feet. We should be able to, if China cut us off tomorrow, we would be in a world of hurt. I mean, every Walmart in America would be empty in a week. You wouldn't be able to buy half, literally, 3/4 of the stuff that we buy right now if China cut us off. And China is threatening a war with us over Taiwan. So anyhow, Joe Biden just slapped a 100% tariff on Chinese-made cars, electric vehicles. Why? Because they're made with slave labor. They're heavily subsidized by the Chinese market. China is only capable of selling right now around 20 to 23 million electric cars a year in their own domestic market, but they're manufacturing over 30 million because they're following Alexander Hamilton's advice to George Washington: become an exporting powerhouse. Before Ronald Reagan came into office and imposed neoliberalism on America, we sold things all over the world. American toasters, American televisions, American computers, American cars, American clothing. These were sold literally, they were sold in Europe, they were sold in Africa, they were sold in Asia, they were sold in South and Central America, Australia, all over the world. American goods were the pinnacle, the best you could get. And then, Reagan with the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and then George Herbert Walker Bush negotiating NAFTA, which then Bill Clinton signed into law. The three of them basically just blew a hole in American manufacturing. 20,000 factories moved to China and Mexico. 20 million jobs, 15,000 factories, 20 million jobs. So anyhow, Biden is doing something about this. 100% tariff on the cars. He raised the tariff on lithium batteries from 7.5% to 25%, from 0 to 25% on critical minerals.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. So Hartman's right. I mean, there's no question. Tariffs are generally a good thing when you're competing, and he used the term slave labor to describe China. So, of course, we should be using tariffs to protect our domestic industries and jobs from predation by exploiters of foreign labor. What I find disappointing in that little sequence is that he can't even mention Trump's name. But Trump was the one who was pushing this policy. And remember, in 2016, he pushed it aggressively against the uber free trader Hillary, who did everything possible not to say she wasn't going to support the TPP. She was so on board the TPP. She ultimately realized she had to back away from it if she wanted to get elected. So, Trump is who he is. He's a narcissist. He's a demagogue. He's a power monger. He's pathetic in a lot of ways. His policies are often terrible, and he's amoral. But that doesn't mean every single thing he says is wrong. It doesn't mean he hasn't had some good ideas. And it doesn't mean, given whom he is running against, that he would necessarily be even worse than she would be. And for all those reasons, most importantly, Gaza, Israel, I think you have to vote for Jill Stein.